In the early game of the Create mod, much needs to be done to set up for greatness. If I want to get to making insane contraptions, crazy builds, and trains to go across the world, I'd have to set up multiple automations and a centralized power system. I am Bedrock Burger, your local womp womp kind of guy. Originally, this episode was going to be much shorter, as I would have only covered one of the three major things I do here, but I decided to extend this video, covering all three of the things. I will also have tutorials on them afterwards, going into more detail on what I do here. On the quest for 213 builds, a lot needs to be set up so I can progress towards upholding my promise. It'll take a bit, as working on multiple videos at once slows down individual progress here, but I'm not stopping the grind. With my return to the world, I did something I forgot to do in the last episode, add a roof and walls around my crushing wheels. With the 213 builds promised from quite some time ago, it's been slow progress, I'm aiming to make as many builds as possible have function, so I count this as one. I didn't count my starter base as one, so now we're at 1 out of 213. Woo! I then decided to take a bit of time and do the mine part of Minecraft, using a hammer from the Create Ironworks mod to create effect. I mostly mined on Y15 for iron, as I was currently short on it. After about a half hour, I returned home and set up a simple ore doubling setup from the simple ore doubling mod. I could heat up a blaze burner and crush raw ores to double it into the Create mod crushed versions of them, also giving a chance to make slag, which could be washed into various materials and also weakened enemies when you shot them with a gun that deals slag damage. Wait, this isn't Borderlands. The loop of mining, then ore doubling continued for about 2 to 3 hours, especially since I found a naturally generated iron ore deposit. Probably some generation from Create Mod or one of the dozen add-ons I have. The ore doubling of the iron took actual hours to do, so long that I stopped recording since it was just me staring at the basin for hours. To help with all the smelting of the ores I was making, I set up a simple hopper furnace array with barrels going into hoppers, then more hoppers on the bottom of the furnaces to pull the materials out. Man, I miss having netherite furnaces. Maybe I should add the iron furnaces mod, assuming it's on Fabric. With all the ore processing done and out of the way for now, with easily 500 iron ores smelted, I turned to my next task, an enchantment setup. I made a smaller new building right next to my starter base so I can just walk 5 blocks to enchant. I used bookshelves added by Biomes We've Gone, Sakura bookshelves. They fit the aesthetic I was working on nicely. After that, one of the 3 big projects of this video, a tree farm for wood. This took quite a while to do, as I initially wanted to make one for Sakura and Ironwood, as I use both a lot in my builds, but it didn't really work out well. Instead, I made one for all vanilla trees except for Dark Oak. Dark Oak is a multi-sapling, so it requires its own special farm. The main issue I ran into was that Create Interactive broke deployers in a weird way, so I unfortunately had to remove that mod. I also didn't have any spruce saplings, and there were none nearby, so I began my odyssey to find some. It took me over 4,000 blocks to finally find spruce saplings, as at the time I didn't realize there were some about 200 blocks from my home up on the nearby mountain. With the spruce sapling acquired, I set up the tree farm, using a deployer for each sapling type to plant them on dirt. I set the deployers to only plant a specific sapling type and use mechanical saws to cut the grown trees down. To make my life much simpler, I also added both an auto sorter to the underside of the farm and an overflow dump to sort the wood types into vertical item vaults and dump any excess saplings or logs that filled into the chest too high. More detailed explanation when I get to making the tutorial, don't worry. I had cherry, spruce, birch, jungle, acacia, and oak all on the farm, and it went very well. Using smart chutes with filters and a belt, it pulled the specific wood types into the chute. I also had one of the deposit spots to dump any apples or sticks into lava so I wouldn't have to worry about those filling up the vaults. On the underside of the item vaults, I added a chest and a regular chute so I'd have a place to grab the items. I fancied the dump chest spot, and added a tiny building around it, not counting that among the 213 by the way, since it's so small. I then made a diamond hammer, then went to a nearby village to bully some villagers into giving me good books for it, like mending. I then went mining for a while as I kept running out of redstone and I just wanted diamonds, like all Minecraft players do. After a bit of book nonsense, I got the hammer to have mending, efficiency 3, unbreaking 3, and fortune 3. Pretty stacked hammer. I didn't have a good hyper experience setup just yet, so I couldn't bump those up higher. With a god tier hammer made, I mined even more for diamonds. Maybe I should make a diamond factory soon. Speaking of factories, on to the second of the big 3 projects for this video, tuff automation. If you didn't know, crushing tuff could produce multiple nuggets of varying materials. Zinc, copper, gold, electrum from a create add-on, I'm forgetting, iron nuggets, and flint, all from crushing the one material. So I got to work on probably my finest automation I've made in all my time with the Create mod. It needed a lot of power to run, so I made some pretty simple steam boilers, the smallest setup I can make, with 4 campfires, 4 fluid tanks, and 2 steam engines. I needed to pump water into it, so I took some time to make a pipe setup pulling from the lake next to my home. A 5th one to automate tuff, but more on that later. With the boilers all running well, I started on the automation. An add-on mod for Create adds stone generators that produce stone when given stress units. It was decently fast too, and saves on having to make bulky cobblestone generator with drills and such. A chute pulled the cobble out of the generator and ran it onto a belt into a basin filled with water. Said basin had a press over it to press the cobblestone and water into tuff. This recipe is from Create Ultimate Factory mod, a mod I highly recommend if you're doing a Create playthrough. After the tuff is made, it's crushed by a pair of crushing wheels to give it a chance to produce one of the several materials it makes. After that, the part I'm most proud of, I set up a basin with brass funnels on each side. One side accepted only a specific nugget, except iron, and the other side only allowed the ingots to leave. I had 2 of these tuff generators, so I had 2 lines of basins that deposited the ingots into the center belt. Above the basins, presses turned the nuggets into ingots. The iron nuggets and flint went into an item vault, as I'd make an andesite alloy autocrafter there soon. The ingots went up a belt and into a few tunnels where they were sorted automatically into barrels. And after it was all completed, I sat back and admired my own work, patting myself on the back. I've been playing this mod for about 10 months now, as I pretty recently got into modding, and with each factory I create, my own skills with this mod increase. Automation gets cleaner, better, and more compact. Happy with my contraption, I got to work on the building to surround it. The roof was a bit tricky as I'm not super good at roofs. When it was all said and done, I dedicated this build to RobinFRT, as it's his or her mods that I use frequently throughout my Create videos, and this gizmo I made here was a direct suggestion to automate tuff. Since recording this, it has absolutely helped in the next part of this video by producing the copper I need for pipes and fluid tanks. Speaking of the next part, let's get to the third and final big project of the video, centralized stress unit generation with a large steam boiler. To start it off, I took apart the tiny boilers powering the tuff automation. For context, it had been a few weeks since recording the tuff build, so I had new and fresh ideas brought from my time spent in All the Mods 9. A mod I had in my pack was Create Crafts and Additions, which allows for straws to be crafted, which when given to blaze burners allows lava to be fuel for them. A single bucket could last for 16 minutes. It's a thing in base Create to use lava buckets on these blaze burners, but requires a much more complicated setup than just pump it in from the bottom, bozo, involving mechanical arms and funnels and stuff, which I really did not feel like doing. This method was a lot easier, and it could also be easily expanded to more boilers. The pipes for this boilers were a bit of a mess, but I tried to hide them as good as possible with the foundation, using water wheels to power those. With the water input I had, lava being pumped from a simple dripstone lava farm, and 14 steam boilers, it was able to be a level 9 boiler, which is pretty good. The shortest of the 3 projects, but this one was the most impactful, as I would be able to use this for quite some time until I would need to eventually scale it up, but I'll work on that later. With it finished, I hooked up the tuff automation to it so it could be powered by just one engine instead of multiples. I also then made a second steam boiler with its own water pumps, as the dripstone farm was enough to fuel both, maybe even 3 steam boilers, but I'm not getting ahead of myself here. With both hooked up using belts to a 6-axis gearbox from one of the Create add-ons I have, and a building created to surround the boilers, I was making over 200,000 stress units. I could hook up another few engines to get up to 280,000, but I was out of andesite alloy to make the engines. I continuously ran out throughout the production of this. In the next episode, I plan to fix that and make a very large scale factory to use all the power I've made. Stay tuned for that one. If you have any ideas for doohickeys I can make, I would love to see them in the comments below. I am Bedrock Burger, and I will see you in the next video.